President Trump is ending a heavily criticized policy separating immigrant families at the U.S. border. For about a week, administration officials argued they were just upholding the law and called on Congress to come up with a solution. But after days of public outrage, President Trump signed an executive order rolling back family separations. Before signing the order, the president said he still wants to be tough on immigration.
I consider it to be a very important executive order. It's about keeping families together while at the same time being sure that we have a very powerful, very strong border, and border security will be equal, if not greater, than previously. So we're keeping families together, and this will solve that problem. At the same time, we are keeping a very powerful border, and it continues to be a zero tolerance. We have zero tolerance for people that enter our country illegally.
Joining me now from Washington is Franco Ordonez. He is a White House correspondent for McClatchy News and the co-host of McClatchy's Majority Minority podcast. All right, Franco, just days ago, President Trump said he would not sign an executive order to stop the family separation policy. So what brought about this change?
It really was an about face, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, there was such a groundswell of opposition to this this policy change from his own party. Laura Bush spoke out. His wife spoke out. But also it was within his supporters, his very important supporting base also began to speak out. Let's remember how important the religious community is to his base. You had folks like Franklin Graham speaking out and saying this was not the right policy. So there was a lot of key people and the very important supporters who tend to be very loyal on this issue really went against him here.
Well, our Paula Reed reports that under the executive order, families can still be separated after 20 days. So was this simply a move by the president to try to get lawmakers to act?
Well, that's the big question here. It's like, what's the next move that Trump is going to make? It's kind of a, is it going to be seek permission first, or is it going to be ask forgiveness later? He says he's going to do this for the remainder of their court hearings. But as you point out, they only can do that for 20 days. He ordered the Attorney General to seek to modify an agreement that requires them only to do 20 days. So they're not going to be able to do this without violating that agreement. In all likelihood, they will try to go, but I can guarantee if they do and they go past those 20 days, there's going to be a lot of court cases popping up.
So former President Obama is now joining the chorus of those who have come out against the zero tolerance policy. I want to play a clip from his final press conference as president where he discussed some of the issues that would cause him to speak out against the Trump administration. Let's listen to that.
For me, at least, I would put in that category efforts to round up kids who have grown up here and for all practical purposes are American kids and send them someplace else. The notion that we would just arbitrarily or because of politics punish those kids when they didn't do anything wrong themselves, I think would be something that would merit me speaking out.
So, Franco, how unusual is it for a former president to criticize a sitting president?
It's very unusual. Presidents tend to, be respectful of future administrations. George W. Bush did that to Obama. Obama has very largely been kept quiet on many of these issues, but it shows how important this issue is to him that he is speaking out. This is an issue that has, as we pointed out earlier, has really tugged on a lot of emotional strings. Jay Johnson, his DHS secretary, just a few weeks ago was out speaking about how, he acknowledged that he did a lot of enforcement, did a lot of the same things Trump did, but he tried not to make it a policy to separate mothers and children.
Well, you and your colleague Anita Kumar recently reported that U.S. officials lost track of nearly 6,000 immigrant children, and that's a major increase from the 1,500 that federal officials said they lost track of. How did you reach that number, Franco, and where is the discrepancy here?
Indeed. I mean, the 1,500 number that came out just a few weeks ago really created an outcry and concern about whether the administration was doing a good enough job protecting these vulnerable kids and putting them in homes where they could remain safe. What we found is that the administration was only taking a fraction of the year's number. They only looked at 3 months of data, made 7,000, a little more than 7,000 calls, but the reality is there was more than 42,000 children placed with sponsors over the last year. And the administration said there was about 14% of those didn't return calls and they couldn't locate where they were. Well, that's not 1,500. That's over 6,000 or around 6,000 that they lost track of. And it's a big concern because it was only a few years ago that they were trying to change the rules and the regulations to protect these kids. And I will note, this was under Obama, that about a half dozen children who had been placed with sponsors found themselves being turned back over to not family friends, but other traffickers who ended up putting them on egg farms doing some pretty grueling work.
All right. Tremendous reporting. Franco Ordonez. Thank you so much, Franco.
Thanks for having me.